so much for being here with me. The emotional eating workshop was something that we did a couple years ago now. I want to say it was in 2023 originally, and the home study has been available ever since. And Clarissa and I had been talking, and we thought it would be a good idea to just revisit it for anyone who has done the workshop or who has done the home study aspect of it and then didn't get the interactive workshop that we did when we originally ran it. So I planned for 90 minutes, but obviously there's only a few of us here. And so we can really do this however we want to do that. I do have recap slides, but there are a lot of them. I am here to answer any questions that you have, facilitate discussion, address concerns, all of that when it comes to emotional eating. So I just wanted to kind of get a lay of the land as far as like what were our best hopes for coming? Did you have specific questions? Did you want me to get out that recap presentation and us go through it and start talking about things? How best can we use your time?
Sorry to interrupt there. I just want to say that I can't see myself on the video, but I'm here in the
Okay,
background and I can
Sheila.
hear everything. Yeah, no problem.
Sounds
Yeah.
good, Sheila. Yeah,
Okay,
it
thanks.
may be that you just need to change. If you
Oh,
want to be able
settings.
to see yourself, yes, there
Yeah.
should be a way for you to maybe unhide
All
yourself,
right.
right? If you've hidden your self view, maybe that's what's
Oh, maybe
happened.
I did. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Oh, hi everybody.
Hi,
Yeah, I'm kind of
Sylvia.
surprised it's small because I was thinking it would be huge. But anyway, yeah, I did the emotional eating workshop, but I think I downloaded all the stuff, but I didn't really get past module two, and I think there were four or five. And it's something that I still struggle with. So my best hope is just to sort of get rebooted in that direction, like, or just, yeah, kind of a review of what it is. And I mean, if you've got slides,
Yeah,
that's fine. If we just talk, that's fine. I don't,
sure.
whatever works out is great. I feel like it's just a good topic and I'm happy
Yeah,
to re, I just feel like I still struggle with it. So I want to work with it.
definitely. Right. I mean, I think that what you're naming, Sylvia, is like really common, right? So many of us engage in emotional eating. And in fact, right, statistically, we know that about 75% of the eating most people do is tied to emotion, right? It's really hard for it not to be when we are emotional beings. And so many of us either were never given tools or taught how to manage those feelings when they come up. And so we just had to cope, right? And it does. It starts as babies. Babies are crying. We don't really know what they need. So the first thing we're gonna try, right, is like the bottle or the breast, whatever. And then as they get older, they still may not have words. So the first thing we're gonna ask them is about food. And so begins that pattern of like, oh, I'm having a big feeling. The first thing I'm going to try to soothe that is food. And then obviously it just kind of grows from there, food often being something that's accessible to us from, again, that very young age. And so, yeah, I think that even after we've addressed substance use disorder, mental health concerns, whatever it might be, we can still then experience emotional eating. And so, yeah, this is why it's been researched for over 4 decades at this point. And we have lots of information and we have lots of ideas, but obviously we don't once and for all or resolve this once and for all because it is so bio individual. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, then maybe I'll just do a recap. Of course, as always, I ask questions because I like to know that we're comprehending, right? This isn't just about like getting information. If we can't, if we don't comprehend it, and if we can't integrate it, we're not actually going to be able to progress in the way that we want to be able to progress. So let's just do this really quick. Oh, hold on. Something is weird. We're gonna try this again. Screen. Okay, there we go. We're on the wrong. That's why. All right. So, really, just a quick reminder how emotional hunger and physical hunger are different, right? Emotional hunger is caused by, an emotional need, and usually there's been some kind of deprivation, um, and we may then crave that comfort or soothing that we can get from food. Where physical hunger really is that slow build, you're going to notice maybe like the growling in the stomach. You're going to notice maybe an emptiness feeling. You might start to feel yourself get sweaty or shaky, like the longer it goes on. And then once you've started to consume food, you notice, oh, I'm starting to get full, or I'm still feeling hungry, right? So signs that you might be emotionally hungry, right? Like if we're always finding ourselves opening the refrigerator or opening the cabinets or the cupboards, it might be that we are giving way too much of ourself away. Or we might think that we know that everybody, right, thinks of us as lazy or mean or whatever, right? Like we might believe that we know people judge us in a very specific way. We might be overly attached to our social status, right? So this belief of like, oh, I don't have a lot of friends or I'm not partnered, and that might cause a lot of distress. We might be people who use things like sex or adrenaline seeking, things to make us feel more alive. We might, again, like use those substances to meet social needs. Maybe we're people who have a hard time accepting when relationships end, not just with a significant other, but be it employment or friendship or, something parasocial even. And we might struggle with boundaries. So these might be signs that we have this emotional hunger in us. Maybe not in any specific instance, but in general, right? That these might be some of those emotional holes that we're trying to fill. Are there any questions so far, or do any of these kind of resonate with you as we're talking about emotional hunger, like the big term, right?
Yeah, 2 and 3 for me are
Okay.
big things. Yeah, I think I know what everyone thinks of me, and isn't always the best. But yeah, that they'd be the ones that, for me anyway, that the most strong.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Sheila. Yeah. And I think that that makes a lot of sense, right?
Mhm.
When we have a belief that our value, our worth, our um belongingness is attached to how we are perceived by others, we can put a lot of weight on these things, right? What other people think about us, our social status, that kind of thing. And it can keep us stuck in a loop in which we go deeper, deeper, deeper into it, and it can start to feel more and more hopeless. And then again, that's a very big feeling, and we will do anything to want to change that. And so then we might seek food to help soothe or numb that a bit. So emotional eating is, separate from, but can be co-occurring with, right? Eating disorders, and or food addiction. And so emotional eating is where we eat to feed our emotions, not our body specifically, right? Sometimes we call this stress eating, where the food has more like meaning to it than just the nourishment, just providing the nutrients that our bodies need in order to function and grow, do all the processes that are required, right? Where eating disorders definitely have that component of it, but there is this persistent disturbance with distressing thoughts and emotions. There can be compulsiveness to it, right? Where it can be restrictive, it can be binging, it can be bulimic, right? So like a purging of some kind, compensatory type behaviors. So it's an aggravated form of emotional eating that can develop as time goes on, right? When the original issue goes unaddressed and those triggers can intensify. So sometimes they can be right? Eating disorders can be activated by trauma. So by sexual assault, by a medical trauma, by a natural disaster, by something bullying, right? Something big and scary happening to us. So it's like an aggravated version of that. And then food addiction obviously has that addictive, like eating to those highly palatable foods. Again, it goes beyond the nutrition needs of our body. It's meant to change or soothe those feelings. But it goes beyond that because it starts to meet substance use disorder criteria, meaning things where now we are giving up social interactions so that we can eat, or because we're recovering from a binge, we are maybe still doing it even when we know that it's dangerous for us to do so. We're trying to eat and drive, or maybe we have type 2 diabetes and it's unmanaged, and we continue to put those things into our bodies that are sending our blood sugar numbers through the roof, that kind of thing. So it's a spectrum, right? And emotional eating can occur on its own, but it can also obviously occur within eating disorders and food addiction. And it can be one of those remnants as we're working on those other things, like an eating disorder or food addiction, that can still be kind of like that final piece where we believe that if I can just resolve it, then I'll never emotionally eat again. But that's not necessarily anything that anybody can guarantee. What we want to do is we want to take a look at what are some of the drivers of our emotional eating, and can we work on some of those things to reduce the harms that come from the emotional eating when it does come, right? Or the harms of like unresolved grievances or grief in general, or trauma, anything that might be driving this, so that we can have a better understanding. In the end, we really want to do more things with our informed consent versus, right, without our consent. So one of the things that we talked about in the first module was like, what is your emotional eater profile? You may or may not remember it. I did not put the questions up here, but essentially, it takes, why isn't it advancing? Oh, hold on a second. My apologies. Oh, there it goes. It was just being slow.
I could see it.
Could you see it advancing? It wasn't on my end.
Well, I don't know. I could see the 4 squares.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was just trying to advance it past that.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know that you could see that, though. Yes. All right. So the first one was the angry eater, right? And when we eat mostly out of anger, some of the things that are suggested to take into consideration as we're working on it is accepting that you are entitled to having feelings, right? Like you get to have feelings. They are real and valid. They may not always be accurate representations of reality as it's happening, but they are real and valid. And so many of us fear anger or believe that we shouldn't be angry. And so we'll try to shove it down, right? Other things we can do, challenge the belief that there's always someone to blame, ourselves included, right? Sometimes stuff just happens. Devising our own motto, right? Like reminding ourselves. So like, I won't let anger eat me up because then I'll emotionally eat, or something, right? Having some kind of reminder. for ourselves. And then obviously when those urges hit, we can do things like urge surfing. But we can also take, a quick walk or just remove ourselves from the situation. So often when we just change our environment, even briefly, or we do something like walk into the bathroom and splash our face with cold water or go get a drink of water, it can really take the intensity out of that anger, and we can think a little more clearly and we can make different choices, right? Sometimes people find that they, want to like record themselves, and then they can like listen to it back later because that really helps to take the steam out of it. Um, or we can journal about it, just ways to get it outside of us without feeling like we always have to stamp it down or tamp it down with food or any other substance. If you do the quiz or have done the quiz and you find that you're more of in the stressed eater profile, this is the boundaries work, really, right? Saying no when we need to say no, delegating, giving some of that responsibility out to others so that we don't have to do it all, especially if we identified with like we give ourselves away or we give too much of ourselves to others. Um, that we challenge that stressful thinking, right? Like, is this really something you need to stress about? I had a person, a near and dear person to me about a year ago, point blank to my face say, well, it sounds like you are stressing just for the sake of stressing. And I was shocked. At first, I was angry because I was like, how dare you? And then I was like, wow, they really see me. Like that is really what I'm doing. And I've really had to take a step back and take a look at that and ask myself anytime I'm starting to feel that stress rise in me, because I know we can all feel it in our bodies, right? I'm like, oh, am I stressing just to stress? Or is this actually something stressful, right? Oxytocin combats stress. So any way that you can get that oxytocin. So, obviously physical touch, is a really great way to get that. We don't always, not all of us live with other, individuals where we can get that physical touch from a roommate or a partner. But we can get it in other ways. We have pets. So, our little four-legged family members also give us oxytocin by spending time with them. We can do things like body work, so going and getting massage or like reflexology or cranial sacral work, can also increase oxytocin. Those things cost money. I get it. One of my favorite ways to get oxytocin, no joke, is to go and watch videos of baby animals, especially like baby donkeys and baby goats because they're so goofy and like they're like the naughty farm animals. I say this in heavy quotations. They get into trouble and I just love them. Like I see myself in them. So little fuzzy babies, just 5 minutes of videos can really, change your oxytocin levels. That being said, go watch videos of human babies if that's your thing, right? And then forgetting how to have fun really does feed that stress cycle. So trying to find things that bring us joy. So the tip was when tempted to eat, right, out of stress, what would happen if you spent 5 minutes just looking through photos from a trip that you had that you really loved or a fun day that you experienced, or just recalling it to our mind can do the same thing. If you fell into the insecure eater profile, this is when we need to watch for the disease to please, right? That fawning and the showing up and being everything to everybody, the appeasement. Because what happens when we're an insecure eater is that insecurity drives us to always want to make other people happy. So some things that we can do, right, is like listing our own best qualities, and starting there, right? Like really focusing on, where do these best qualities of myself show up in my life? How can I get it more, right? So if my best qualities are, I'm a hard worker, I'm a a friendly person and I love plants or the earth, right? Something like that. Really looking at where do those things show up in our lives and then how can I increase those things? Because the more I connect with the things that I value, the less insecure I feel, right? We can also use the 3 Ps to build confidence in our expressing ourselves. So planning it, practicing it, and putting it into action. Sometimes we're people who need to practice scripts before we have interactions, and that's totally fine. So we can plan it out what we want to say. We can practice how we want to say it. My oldest is ADHD, and she loves to practice by like social interactions by talking to her cat. So she pretends the cat is the friend or the teacher or the bus driver or whomever it is she needs, whatever, and she practices it so then she can put it into action. And finally, like leaning into one of the 4 agreements, like not taking things personally. When people show up in our lives and they give their opinion of us, because that's what it is, it's an opinion of us. This is more to do with them than it is to do with us. And so if we can start to discern, oh, that's actually a projection of this individual's own stuff, we can really start to not take things so personally. And if we want to practice this, or if we're not sure what those things are, those best qualities that we have, try calling somebody who reliably makes you feel good about yourself, right? And have a chat with them. Ask them, hey, I'm working on this thing. I'm trying to, decrease or increase my security, decrease my insecurity, increase my security with myself as a person. And I struggle to see my own best qualities. How do you perceive me? What do you think are my best qualities? There's the emotionally wounded eater profile. So those are those painful memories, past traumas, adverse childhood experiences that often are like the script running in the background. This one, we would definitely say for any of them, but especially this one, that if it's deep, if it's big, and it's not been addressed in the past, professional support can help. It's never too late to start that. Some of the other things that we can do on our own, right, is work toward letting go of the belief that we're not worth the bother of getting help, right? How many of us have felt like, oh, it's not worth it. I'm a burden. I'm not sick enough. I'm bothering somebody. You're not bothering anybody. You're absolutely worth it. There is no such thing as too sick, not sick enough. If you want to change things, let's work on that. Give yourself permission to be open with people that you trust, right? And not everybody gets every part of you. And separate like what's happening currently from the old stuff, because that old stuff, when it's unresolved, really glums on to the current stuff and it can make it feel so much bigger. So this is another place where we can practice a motto or a mantra, right? Reminding ourselves that my past doesn't get to dictate who I am today or my future, right? Something along those lines. And I like to put these in there sometimes because this is that whole, like, we have to practice and practice and practice until we feel proficient at it. And so these mottos might feel awkward. And certainly nobody has to do it if they don't want to, but if it's something you're interested in, they may feel awkward at first, but the longer we do it, we make it our own, and it does become more familiar and it feels more comfortable. So another thing that we really talked about in the first module of the emotional eating workshop was learning to identify and describe our emotions, because when we don't have the words to describe what's going on for us, it is more likely to increase our risk for substance use, increase anxiety, increase rates of depression, and overall it reduces our life satisfaction. And so one of the things that I really wanted to impress upon participants in the first module was starting to give you language for how you can express how you're feeling. So you were given tools like a feelings wheel and a feelings table, but here's the thing. Looking at a feelings wheel or a feelings table can certainly help us, but we still don't always know. And so we can find different ways to describe our feelings, right? We can name where it lives in our body, like where it's showing up. Maybe you're feeling something in your stomach, excuse me, or your chest or your throat. We can give it a color, we can give it a shape, we can give it a texture, a temperature, a smell, a taste, a sound, right? We can describe our emotions in lots of different ways. But the point is that once we start to get language around it, we can start to separate ourselves more from ourselves, right? Big S self from the emotion. That emotion no longer has to run us. We don't have to feel so out of control. We can see what it is, and then we can start to decide how we want to take care of it. Any questions about any of this stuff so far? Okay, you can always stop me. Something else we talked about in module 1, a tool, was this inner conversation. And so we're going to walk through it here. The first step is asking ourselves how we're feeling. This is where a notebook or journaling comes into handy. So this is about using I feel statements. Okay, so starting with a single word, you may want to use your feelings wheel or your feelings table. Right? I feel, maybe I feel worried. Maybe I feel excited. Maybe I feel nervous. And just notice when you say the statement or you write it down, where does that emotion show up in your body? Right? If you're a person who's like, ooh, I feel worried, where does that show up for you? Okay. The second step is, what do I need? Okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is where it's showing up in my body. What do I need? So something that's really important to remember is that we are never done developing. Okay, so in fact, research just this year, new publications, peer-reviewed publications, are starting to show us that the brain development that we used to think ended at 25 is actually not true. It's closer to 32, and then there's even another brain shift in our 60s that they're discovering now, right? So really thinking about, no matter where you are, in your life, right, years wise, whatever big age you are, that there's always some development need. And every stage has specific needs. So find yours, get specific about it, right? If my need is I need support, that's so broad, right? My kids are going to look at me with deer in the headlight eyeballs and be like, I have no idea what that means, Mom. I support you. Cool, thank you, love you. And what I actually mean is, I need you to do the dishes and I need you to take out the trash because I need to go do this other thing, right? So getting specific. So listing, some concrete ways that we can even then meet those needs, and then doing it in those baby steps, those actual doable steps can be really, really helpful. And then the third step is using that nurturing voice. So this is where you're going to access that voice that you would use to with like an animal or a child or sometimes even a perfect stranger, right? That compassionate, understanding part of us. And its job is going to be to identify and validate the emotions that we're feeling, right? That we did in step 1. We're going to comfort or cheerlead or guide toward meeting the need and provide hope, right? So in step 2, you identified what needs and we were specific. And the job of this voice is not to be overly indulgent. It's not to be overly permissive or childlike. It is about nurturing healthy limits. So for anybody who has ever done self-compassion work, maybe you've done foundations with us, or maybe you just really like Kristen Neff or John Christopher, or maybe you just really like self-compassion. Self-compassion is tender and fierce, right? So it is comforting it is cheerleading and it provides hope, right? It's goodwill, but it is not permissive giving. And it does have that kind of oomph behind it. That so what, know what, now what feeling, right? So that thing happened. Okay, now what are you going to do about it? But not in that inner, right, from that inner critic place, right? And so we can write these things out like in a journaling form. We can use these with a trusted other. We can even talk out loud to our cats if we want to. But these steps help us to better identify what we're feeling, what we need, and then how to walk ourselves through it. And then actually engage in the behavior that we identified as to how we want to resolve it. So overall, module 1 was about identifying emotional hunger from, sorry, I keep freezing. So emotional hunger from physical hunger, how emotional eating can show up as its own its own kind of entity, but it can also be co-occurring with eating disorders and food addiction. That when we better understand the drivers behind our emotional eating, we can be more specific about the interventions that we use to address our specific phenotype of emotional eating. When we learn to name our emotions and locate them in our body, we can start to move toward having more vocabulary and discerning ourselves from them. And then that inner conversation is a practice that we can use before we eat. We can practice it at the end of the day just to start to build that skill. But really, it was about just getting a lay of the land. Module 1 was about getting the lay of the land and to start to give you some tools to start getting at emotional eating. So, how are we doing? Does this all pretty much feel like a recap for anybody who went through it?
Yeah, it's a great recap. And I'm sort of seeing like the bigger picture in a way, like how the self-compassion work feeds into this and how the distress tolerance, like all the different subjects. I mean, I'm sort of seeing how they all kind of go together.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm thinking is like one of my issues is I sometimes can identify my emotion and I can identify what I need, but then the immediate thought is, but I can't have that. I can't get that.
Okay.
So I think some of what I need to, I'm thinking I need to do two things. One is sort of find smaller ways to get what I think I need, you know, like if there's not another person there to hug me, then like, is there some other way that I can fill that need for comfort or touch or solace or whatever it is? And then the other thing I think is like distress tolerance, like just sort of being able to say to myself, okay, honey, yeah, you need that, and you don't have it right now, and I'm sorry, but like the food in the fridge isn't going to help. So I don't know. It was useful. So thanks for going through all of that.
Yeah, you bet, Sylvia. Thank you. I'm glad that, right, that kind of recapping some of these things can be that reminder of like, oh yeah, those are maybe the the baby steps or the half steps that I'm missing,
Yeah,
right? In how
yeah.
to actually create action around some of this. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm finding sitting with it very good as well, and just saying what exactly am I feeling, and what do I really want, and the distress intolerance, because before this would be no, I have to have some chocolate, I have to get out because I work from home, and I need to get out of the place because I just feel, I don't know, over this, like I just cabin fever. So that's, I'm trying to make a gap between just the reaction and, it used to be like, this overwhelming need or overwhelming craving, and then I just go for it. Now I'm just making, there's a space, there's not all the time, but today anyway there was. So just, yeah, just noticing how I feel, and that is and the feelings wheel is great, because I would just say, oh, I'm just feeling impatient, but it gets you to maybe notice other ways you might be feeling that you don't even think of a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So you might
Yeah.
think you're not, I never get angrier, but then maybe that's coming up as another way something else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Thank you, Sheila. Yes.
Mhm.
Right. So just starting to identify, like, oh, I'm feeling trapped or I'm angry. And maybe anger isn't the word that we can easily, like, right? It may not be accessible to us to say I'm mad or I'm angry because for whatever reason, we don't believe that we can be, but maybe there's a different word. And once you can identify that word, maybe you're like, oh, but that doesn't feel exactly it. So let me keep exploring.
Mm.
Yes,
It's a great
absolutely.
tool, and the needs as well. The needs wheel is really good as well. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for
Yeah,
those resources. Yeah.
absolutely. And I think it was really important to me to put that in there to get people thinking because I think, I am certainly, I mean, I'm going to say I'm guilty of it, but I'm not sorry about it. I will always ask people, what do you need? And I think so many of us will say, well, I don't know, right? We go blank because we don't get asked this question often enough, right? Because we were never taught how to identify our needs, or we had them, but they were really like silenced out of us, or right? We were somewhere along the line, we learned it doesn't matter if I have needs because it just doesn't, right? And so just trying to give you words to start to explore or get curious about what those could be. And then once we can identify them or better identify them, we can better take care of them,
Yeah.
right? We're no longer looking to eat a whole jar of peanut butter to make the loneliness go away. We start to realize like, oh, I am lonely. And what I really want is just some like good quality adult conversation. How can I find that? Right. So, module two, we talked about emotional hunger versus emotional satiation. So, again, that big idea of emotional hunger, not necessarily just in those specific moments where we are in like an emotional eating, risky time or scenario event, versus that emotional satiation. So, again, that big idea of like, how do I feel satiated from an emotional perspective? So, emotional satiation is the feeling that we've gotten something emotionally nourishing, right? Maybe this is closeness or connection or love or companionship. It could be affection. It could just be that feeling of being heard or seen, being understood, being appreciated, being nurtured, being valued. Okay? And your body knows the difference, okay? When we're calm and we're in our window of tolerance, you hear me talk about this often in Sweet Sobriety, right? When we're in that window of tolerance, that is when we are in our rest and digest phase, right? So we're calm, our body, we're not like activated, we're not in that hyper aroused state to fight, it's fight or flight, and we're not in that pair of that low freeze flop place either. We're in that little happy medium window. So when we are in those dysregulated states, hyper or hypo aroused, that ability for us to digest our food, uh, for our body to do the processes that it needs to, right? For our liver and kidneys to work the way that they need to, that actually goes on pause when we're in those states because all the energy has to go to survival. And if we are experiencing emotional abandonment, that can feel like a hunger pang for people. There can be that sense of emptiness in our stomach, or like just internally, even when we're surrounded by other people, right? And so it often mimics those experiences that we've probably all had at least once in our life, right? That when we eat and eat and eat, and it just feels like it's not actually filling the hole, right? So, what do we need for emotional satiation? So a reminder that like this is never about like, oh, this is like the gold standard and this is what we're aiming for. This is all going to be again, bio individual to you. But things that we look for or the components that go into it are things like emotional maturity, emotional regulation, and emotional fulfillment. So how do we do this? Things like self-care. And self-care can look like anything from doing dishes and making our bed to some of the more like pampering type activities that people talk about, the bubble baths and the manicures and the pedicures and the massages. There's nothing wrong with any of those kinds of things as long as it's truly self-care for you. It fills your cup. Right? Sometimes people find this in meditation. Sometimes people find this in movement or journaling or just spending time in nature. I've recently started feeding the birds in my neighborhood again. I had stopped for a very long time because of avian flu. But I'm just like every morning I get to listen to them. I get to watch them. And I don't know, it's doing something for me this summer, I feel like, right? But when we can even spend time alone, so reconnecting with self, getting to know ourselves, what do I like to do, what are my values, what are my passions. Getting sunlight on our skin can be self-care. Not only is it nice sometimes to have the warmth, but it helps us to produce vitamin K, which we need to process vitamin D, or vice versa. Maybe it produces, but I don't know now off the top of my head, but you need them. You need the sunlight to be able to do that process. And we all need more vitamin D in our lives, probably. Again, that intimate connection with people that we love, and intimacy comes in all different forms. And then having good sleep hygiene and nutrition as well can be forms of self-care. And obviously, this is not a total and exhaustive list, but these are just some ideas of where we can start if we really have no idea as to what self-care could look like for us. Another thing that we talked about in module 2 is learning to discern when I need to soothe, like be calm or calm the moment, or when I need to grieve, right? So self-soothing is when we can comfort ourselves when we're anxious or distressed, without, unhealthy or maladaptive, I said negative coping, and you can define that however you need to, as a way of being kind to ourselves, right? So things that we can try, making sure that we're wearing comfortable clothing, right? If it doesn't make you feel comfortable, confident, and joyful, doesn't need to be on your body. Clothes should fit you, not the other way around, right? Getting a comfortable chair. I had this office chair forever and ever, amen. And honestly, I hated it because it hit me on my legs in certain ways and pressed into my thighs in a way that I didn't like, and it would leave marks after sitting in it all day. I found a Lazy Boy brand office chair. I love it, right? There's nothing wrong with giving if you're going to sit in it all day, it should be comfortable, right? Practicing things like deep breathing, holding and hugging ourselves. So sometimes, we can cross our arms and hold ourselves if our shoulders don't really allow for that, because I have had clients who have said, Molly, I love this idea, but my shoulders just won't allow it. We can do it with our faces like this. We can rub our hands together nice and slowly. These are havening. This is like a havening touch, right? And then once it's warm, we can even move that to different parts of our body. That can feel good. We can hold stuffed animals. We can listen to music. We can sing or pray or chant. Take warm showers. If you were here early enough to hear the playlist that I was playing, I was listening to Superman, who is an indigenous man. He's of the Crow Nation, and he writes music and writes, and like there's just something about it that I have always loved about the Crow Nation and how they celebrate and how they sing and how they chant. So like things that we connect with. And then those soothing words, thinking back to the self-compassion, right? It's okay to feel this. Like it's okay to have these feelings. It's understandable. It's reasonable to see how we got here, why I'm upset by this. Or you're okay, or I'm okay, I'm here to help. It's talking to that inner child that may be having a hard time, right? And it will be about practice with self-soothing. It is going to feel weird or bad or wrong sometimes when we haven't had a lot of experience doing it, because it's unfamiliar, not because it's unsafe. So, just that nice little reminder that just because it feels weird or wrong doesn't always mean that it's weird or wrong. It could be just because it's unfamiliar. So knowing when to grieve, we talked about grief in this module. So it it is a self-care skill, right? Knowing when to grieve, because self-soothing sometimes is not enough. And so some things that we can do is sometimes we need to go to a safer space. I give myself timeouts whenever I need to. I'm just like, oh, I'm in timeout, and I go find my safe space. We go through and name our emotions, locate them in our bodies, right? We can scan our memories for earlier times when we felt the same way. And we can re-experience it as if we're watching a video of it if we want. We don't have to go there at all. Sometimes I like to revisit it to remind myself, like, the last time I felt like this, what helped, right? What helped make it feel better? Um, Sometimes we need to work with a professional, sometimes journaling, but mostly it comes down to allowing ourselves to grieve, right? To let go of this idea that we shouldn't cry, or that we shouldn't feel rage, or that we shouldn't scream, right? That we should censor ourselves, all these shoulds that show up to shame us out of experiencing what we're experiencing. I'm a big fan of screaming into a pillow. I'm a big fan of, like, just acknowledging, like, this, like, there is a violent rage inside of me, right? It doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and hurt somebody. It just means I'm acknowledging, like, there's a lot of hot heat energy inside of me, and it wants to go somewhere. Right. All right. We also talked about core wounds and healing them. So core wounds can, or when there are those core wounds, they often start in childhood. They can be things around, for example, abandonment, betrayal, deprivation. It can be about rejection or shame, bullying. And when we don't confront these beliefs or these core wounds, it can create core beliefs, and then dysfunctional assumptions. And then we have these rules. We're working on this right now in membership, right? That can grow into false beliefs about ourselves, right? It can really color how we start to see the world. So to address core wounding, we need to acknowledge the issue, right? And work toward no longer repressing or masking the wound. We can't do anything if we don't acknowledge or accept that this thing happened, or this is my truth, right? And then give ourselves permission to actually feel the emotions underneath it. And then evaluate our attachment style. We talked a lot about attachment style in this workshop, right? And recognizing that even if we didn't have the ability to have trust or feel trust or experience trust in our childhoods, that doesn't mean that we can't learn to build what are called earned secure attachments now. We also talked a lot about self-compassion. So this would have been a recap for anybody who's done that work. And that reminder that using that self-compassion and increasing self-compassion, it increases our capacity for managing more stressful situations. It's linked to greater wisdom, right? Because we can turn inward toward our own ancient inner wisdom. It increases emotional intelligence, right? Because it allows us to have understanding and curiosity and compassion, not only for ourselves, but for others. It increases autonomy, meaning I no longer have to look to the outside world to know that I'm okay or to get permission to do things. I actually can look to myself to know that I'm okay, and that I can give myself permission based on my own boundaries, my own integrity, my own values, right? And it increases competence. It means that I am now more competent at taking care of myself. I'm more competent of knowing and understanding what needs may be met, or what my children's needs may be, so that I can meet them. It enhances our motivation, and supports healthy behaviors. And self-compassionate people are described by partners as more emotionally connected, less controlling, with greater relationship satisfaction. So if that's happening externally, it's definitely happening internally. We start to have better relationship with self, right? To self, to body, to food, and it increases relationship satisfaction. So one of the things that we did was a catch and reframe. We had a case example. Her name was Shelley, and her most painful thought was, I'm not a motivated or disciplined person. She said, I guess I'm lazy, and I always take the path of least resistance. And her reframes, right? We're like, oh, yeah, turns out I'm not actually lazy. What happens is I procrastinate because I'm feeling anxious, because I'm overwhelmed, and because I'm discouraged. And when we started to explore, she said, I feel more motivated when I'm patient with myself and I praise the small steps. So giving herself acknowledgement for the behaviors that she was proud of, right? So that positive reinforcement. She noticed that when she set realistic goals, that she could accomplish them, right? So instead of always moving those goalposts like we are so apt to do, she acknowledged like, oh, hey, I'm always kicking the can down the road and I'm never actually getting there. So what would happen if I set some more realistic expectations for myself? And she found she felt more motivated when she reminded herself that she actually wasn't in competition with anyone. This wasn't about compare and despair and, oh, somebody else is so much further down the line than me, or they're getting it and I'm not. It was, oh, yeah, this is my journey and it will happen on the time that I need it to happen on. So, overall, module 2, we talked about, again, that difference between emotional satiation versus hunger. We talked about self-care as an active skill, knowing the difference between soothing a moment and grieving whatever that's going on for it. We talked about acknowledging and working toward healing core wounds. We maybe busted some myths about self-compassion, and we learned to catch those unhelpful thoughts and then reframe them. Do we have questions about module 2?
I was just going to say there, I love the piece about you're not in competition with anyone, because I often think I have a very successful, my family is, my brothers are all very successful, and I just feel like that I should be doing better than I am at the moment. But I never think about the people that maybe didn't get on so well, and I always seem to think about the people that are doing better than me, that are the same age as me, that I knew from when I was young. But I'm probably leaving out a load of people as well. And just like you're not in competition, that I need to tell myself that a bit more, because I'd be very hard on myself. So yeah,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. Absolutely, right? And we all get sucked into it, especially because we all live in societies and with cultures that really love this idea that we can, if we all just work hard enough, we too can do the thing. How many of you have heard, if I can do it, anybody can do it? I swear every time somebody says that in my mind, I envision throat punching them. And this is just a full confession. I really do. And the reason why I have such a strong reaction is because it's complete bullshit. It is complete bullshit. First of all, we don't need to be comparing ourselves to others. Secondly, that person often, whoever is saying the thing, often fails to take into consideration all the privileges, right, that they have compared to the people that they're often saying it to. One of the things that I remember hearing as a young adult, and it put a lot of shame in me, was that somebody said to me, well, Molly, you have the same 24 hours Beyonce has. And I believed them. I believed them. I believed them. And then later on, it took me a little while, but later on, I was like, wait a minute. I actually don't have the same 24 hours that Beyonce has, because I don't have somebody driving me from place to place. I don't have somebody cooking my meals and just bringing them to me when it's time to eat. I don't have somebody who's managing my schedule and putting me on the plane. I don't have the same 24 hours that Beyonce has. And I imagine you don't either. If you do, that's awesome. If not, I see you, right? And so to remind ourselves that like we're all starting from where we're starting from, and that if we are competitive in nature, which some of us have that personality, compete against yourself. Who are you today versus who were you yesterday? right? If that's what drives you, if that's what motivates you, what would it be like to just be in competition with yourself? I often say to myself, 1 year from today, if I were in the same place, would I want that? And usually it's no. No, I don't want to be in the same place that I am a year from now, right? And that drives me to make different choices. So when it comes to emotional eating, if I were thinking about like how often I engage in emotional eating or even some of the consequences of that, positive or negative, do I want to be in the same place a year from now? And some of us might be in a space of like, it doesn't happen all that often. And I can actually like see the reasons why, and I can forgive myself for that. And I'm just going to keep attempting to do my best. Awesome. Maybe you're in a place where you would say, yep, I want to be in the same place a year from now. That'd be fine by me. And maybe you're saying, yeah, no, I don't like how this is going. And that's okay. All right. So then module 3, we started talking about loving limits and finding joy, right? So what are those loving limits? It's just another way to talk about boundaries, right? Those guardrails. And they come from that place of self-respect, not punishment, right? They're about protecting our time, our energy, our emotional capacity, so that we have something left to give ourselves. So often we don't even have our own leftovers to give ourselves because we are so emotionally bankrupt, right? Energetically bankrupt by the end of the day. We've got nothing. So having those loving limits can really help us to still have something for ourselves, because boundaries are a form of self-care. It's not about rejecting other people. It's about saying yes to ourselves, right? And we don't do that very often, usually, right? All right. So we talked about rediscovering our childlike sense of wonder. So, how we can increase joy by increasing our creativity, allowing our imaginations to like run away, right? Like it's okay to be bored because that's when our imaginations often do get to come online. Engaging in spontaneity and playfulness, and not just because we're like looking for that reward necessarily, right? But that we do it because we just enjoy the thing. So play is a public necessity, right? So a life lived without play often looks like increased depression, increased chronic stress-related illnesses, and sometimes even criminal behavior. Ways that we can re-engage with our sense of wonder, right? Have a spontaneous dance party in your kitchen while you're waiting for the microwave to go off. Try something new without needing to be good at it, right? Like, go play chess in the park, right? Learn a language. Go put your hands in the dirt, right? Dig in a garden. Compliment a stranger. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if I'm just noticing it more often, but I feel like in the last few weeks, I've had more people just say like, "Oh, I love your shirt," or "I love your smile," right? Whatever, like complete strangers as I'm like walking into a building or something. And it just changes your whole day. And I like to give that back to people, right? Reconnecting with old friends too, or just watching children playing can be really good for I guess like reintroducing us to our joy that we probably had at one time in our life. In this module, we talked about the joy scale, and there was a little practice in there where you could kind of think of areas in your life. Just choose one to start with. Maybe it's your health, maybe it's your career, rating your emotional state. In that area of life, deciding on your emotional goal, and then doing the things that would work you toward meeting that goal. There was also a quiz in there to help you better understand maybe what your playful personality was so that you could be more directed toward what kind of play might best fit your personality if you're looking for a place to start. If you already have ideas of things that bring you joy and you like to play in the ways you like to play, that is totally fine. So some of us are other directed play, meaning we enjoy playing with others because we want the social connection, not necessarily the activity. So this might be when you want to organize a game night with your friends. Maybe you play a team sport. I heard in New York, I don't know, Sylvia, maybe you can confirm this for me or not, but I heard that some of the lights are being left on longer in parks or like on soccer fields so that people who work late or whatever, communities can come together and still play and there's lights. There's usually places have it's called Meetup, and you can get online, or there's an app even, and you can find groups of people who are like going for hikes or going on nature walks, or they're getting together to learn something together, those shared interests. And other player types that might be related to this from the module are like the jokers, so like people who like to tell jokes or comedy kind of stuff, the storyteller. People who really love sharing stories with others. There's lighthearted play where maybe you don't generally take life too seriously. You like to improvise rather than plan. So maybe you're a person who would enjoy something like karaoke or dancing or a spontaneous outing, trying something new. You might like doing physical activity, exploring new places. There was one year where I was just like hell-bent on going and like doing the touristy things, like even in my own little area. And it's so funny, like how many things you don't even know exist in your own little area because you miss it, you live there, so it's just like you don't even see it. But it's really fun to stop and read like the historical signs, or go to the historical district, or go to the library and ask a librarian. Right, go find an art installment. People really, they're everywhere. Like you can be walking out in the woods and all of a sudden there are all these like sculptures because people put art installments places, right? So just exploring adventure, that can be a lighthearted play. If you're more of an intellectual, maybe you like wordplay or problem solving. I think it's like New York Times. I don't know. I really like doing the Wordle and the connections games. But like crosswords, board games, I love playing cribbage, learning a new skill just for the challenge of it, escape room, right? Like putting clues together. So really gets your brain going. Maybe you really like that. Maybe you love rules and you love to play to win. Maybe you love organizing how things go. This might be for you. Maybe you're more into whimsical things. I'm definitely an oddball. I love doing whimsical things, right? There doesn't need to be a special occasion. I've got garden gnomes this year. We've put up wind chimes in places, like in the house, outside of the house. We're coloring, we're scavenging, like scavenger hunting. We're painting rocks and leaving them for people. So maybe you like making things, or maybe you like to thrift or antiquing, right? Like antiquing is kind of a thing. Whatever, if you are into whimsy, whatever gets at that for you. Right? So practical ways that you can add more play, obviously the movement, dancing, yoga, trying a new sport. Sometimes my kids and I like to put like a sidewalk chalk, like instead of like the traditional hopscotch, we do like spin, pop the bubbles, jump from lily pad to lily pad, and like we do it along the entire block. And it's fun to watch like the adults even like as they're walking by to like do the things. Maybe you like to daydream and then like, or read stories or write stories. Take that tour, right? Spending time with friends, joining a club, pottery, knitting, scrapbooking, small collection of something, redecorating someplace in your house. These are all creative and forms of play. So just that recap from module 3, right? That we talked about loving limits, like boundaries, or as boundaries, that they are self-care. They are about saying yes to us, that joy is built from creativity, spontaneity, and play just for the sake of playing. The joy scale gives us a way to measure it and remeasure it if we want to. If we're a person that really likes that kind of thing, who wants something tangible to work toward. Knowing our playful personality style can point us in a direction of where to start. Looking at playful things that we can enjoy and sustain, and just those small, regular acts of things like walking or like a random kindness to somebody, or even just writing things. Rewire our brain toward happiness. So, do we have questions about module 3?
I only got as far as the first module, even though I downloaded a lot of things, so I have to go through it properly. So I haven't actually done the module 3 yet, but it sounds very good, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome, Sheila. Absolutely.
Molly, is the joy
Yeah.
scale in the module 3 stuff? Because
Yes.
I didn't see it, but maybe I just didn't download it when I did it.
That could be. And it's probably on the slides versus
Okay.
like a worksheet. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a look. Thank you.
Yeah. You bet. So finally, we talked about spiritual hunger because spiritual hunger and emotional hunger often get tied up into or together, right? And so spirituality, I know, is a topic that when I was early on in my days of like addressing what was going on for me, I didn't want to go there. And so that's totally reasonable if this is not a module that you're ready to go to yet, but maybe you're curious enough. And this isn't about, going to church or any of those kinds of things necessarily, right? It's about when we feel deprived of purpose or passion or pleasure or joy, when life always feels like a grind, like it feels like, oh, we were born to wake up, eat, go to work, go to sleep, and do it all over again. Or if you're a person who has spent your days just giving, giving, giving yourself away and there's nothing left for yourself, right? That is spiritual hunger. And again, that can be so bankrupting to ourselves that we need something very big and external to soothe and numb and change it. So we really want to pay attention to the spiritual hunger side of things as well. So signs of spiritual depletion are feeling emptiness, restlessness, unease, feeling like we don't have purpose or like life is meaningless or I'm meaningless, that we have a lack of inspiration or motivation, um, lots of boredom. Again, I'm going to emphasize here, boredom is not a bad thing, but if it's pervasive and you can't quite, right, like get your momentum to take care of it, that could be telling you something. So things we can do, as we hear often that practicing of gratitude, one thing you can do is if you don't want to share gratitudes with others. I know some people have a gratitude practice where they send their gratitude list to each other at the beginning or the end of the day or whenever. You can keep a journal of those things, but you could even just have a practice of like, noticing, oh, like today I'm grateful that even though the smoke has started to come back in and my allergies are whatever, I can still see blue skies. And I'm really grateful for that because if there's too many days of gray skies, I start to feel a little depressed, right? So I can be grateful for the blue skies and I can be grateful that there are still green leaves on the trees and I can be grateful that the birds are coming to see me. Just practicing those kinds of things can help us to notice the small things and not let that hopelessness get in there, right? Radical acceptance is that act of personal choice and power. It's recognizing what's really happening in our lives, even if we don't like it, right? Radical acceptance does not mean that we condone it. It just means that we can acknowledge and say, yes, this is happening, right? Accept that it is happening so that we can put kind of like a marker there so that we can move forward in a different way. We can use coping statements like, I can't change the past. I know a lot of people like to use the serenity prayer from the 12-step world, right? I'm going to butcher it. How does it go? I can accept the things I cannot change and no.
Yeah, I'll tell
Oh
you.
my,
God,
yeah, go
God
ahead.
grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change, to change the things I can and the wisdom to know the difference. And
Yes,
you don't
thank
need
you.
God, you just sort of need to think about those
Right.
three things.
Right. Exactly. Thank you, Sylvia. Yes, it's the acceptance of the things that I cannot change. So thinking about the things that you can't change in your life. You can probably influence them, right? Like you can influence other people, but you can't change other people. You can influence policy, but you can't necessarily change policy, right? Like whatever it might be. Um, the courage to change the things that I can. What are the things that I can change? I can change how I perceive the world. It may not happen overnight. It may not happen as quickly as I want it to happen, but I can start doing that work. I can change how I show up in my relationships. I can change how I talk to the people that I run into at the grocery store, right? Those are the things that I can change. And then again, the wisdom to know the difference, right? Like knowing what can I actually impact and what do I need to like let go of and know, okay, that's none of my business, right? So we also talked about the four agreements as part of that spirituality in this module. I really like the four agreements. I really like how Don Miguel Ruiz lays it out because it does take that idea to your point, Sylvia, a God out. It's more about Toltec wisdom. So it's more about like just that, again, that ancient inner wisdom that we have. That so he says all the magic you possess is based on your word. Your word is pure magic, and misuse of your word is black magic. And this is just not just your spoken words, but your thoughts too. And what he means by that is we believe what we say. We believe what we think. Right. And so if we believe that we are bad people, we are lazy people, we're selfish, we're low bottom burnouts, addicts, whatever. When we say those things, we believe those things. And so we need to be mindful of the things that we're saying and thinking because that black magic, right? Like that gunky, like we put a spell on ourselves and we keep ourselves trapped with that thinking. If I always believe I'm a lazy person and I repeat that story over and over again, how do you think I'm going to behave? I'm probably going to behave in a way that looks like I am a lazy person, right? But if I write the story of like, oh, you're a person who likes slow mornings. Oh, that makes a lot more sense. I'm like, oh, I'm not lazy. I just like it to go at a different pace in the morning. That's what works for me, right? Um, because here at the end of the day, nobody has ever abused you more than you have abused yourself, right? So speak with integrity, say only what you mean, don't use your word against yourself or to talk poorly about others. And when you do condemn yourself, or when you learn to stop or start figuring out where you can kind of throw the wrench in the cog, right? You do start to open that door to, this idea of heaven that can exist inside of us. Like, oh my goodness, like I can be really kind to myself. I can be really sweet to myself. I can talk to myself the way I imagine a very loving being might talk to me. He goes on to talk about not taking anything personally because nothing other people do is because of you. It is because of themselves. We all live in our own dream in our own mind. Right. So as we get into shadow work and sweet sobriety stuff, if you do the liberation program, that kind of thing, we'll start to see how Carl Jung would call out this idea of like so much of what we believe to be true about other people is really a projection of ourselves. And this is about shadow stuff, but it's also about golden shadow stuff. It's also about those positive things that we can often see in others that we can't see in ourselves. Right. So even opinions that other people have about us aren't necessarily true. So we don't need to take what's in our own mind personally either, right? Like their opinions, we don't have to take personally. We don't have to take our own mind, right? Our own opinions personally. Um, and when we practice self-forgiveness, it actually liberates us from that dependence on others. Because if we can forgive ourselves for, saying the thing, essentially sticking our foot in our mouths or whatever, we no longer have to rely on somebody else to give us permission for it to have been okay, right? That we can say to ourselves, like, you're okay, you're all right, stuff happens, you're a human being. You're going to be more mindful of it next time. You're allowed to make mistakes. It's okay. or the third agreement from Don Miguel Ruiz's four agreements is don't make assumptions, right? So he says, all the sadness and drama you have lived in your life was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. And it's so true. How many of us can, right? Well, we're living life forward, right? And when we look backwards, hindsight's 2020. That's why that saying exists, right? But when we look back, oftentimes we can see situations where, oh, I wrote a lot of stories. I wrote a lot of stories and I caused myself needless suffering because I decided in my mind that person didn't text me back because I was bad and wrong or they were rejecting me in some kind of way because I was too much, not enough, whatever it might be. But the truth is that that's me making assumptions about that person's actions and then taking it personally, right? And here's the thing. Our big human brains really do like to justify and explain everything because there is a part of us that believes if we do that, that we will feel safe, right? But assumptions distort our perspective and they introduce imaginary problems into relationship with ourselves, with food, with others, with our coworkers, right? With a spiritual practice, with a gratitude practice. And so how do we start to get around it? When we can get curious, when we can start asking questions instead of assuming and communicate clearly, right? Oh, this is what I need. This is what I heard. Is this what you meant? Right? Asking clarifying questions, whatever. That's how we can avoid misunderstandings. The fourth agreement is always do your best. Now, your best on the days that you feel your best are going to look a whole lot different than the best that you can do on the days that you don't feel your best, right? So your best will change moment to moment, right? It will be different when you're healthy versus tired versus calm versus stressed, right? And so doing your best without judging yourself based on a fixed standard, right, is what keeps the other agreements sustainable. And they are challenging to implement, but with consistent practice, right, they start to become second nature. And I'm willing to bet as we've gone through them, you're seeing where you probably do some aspect of all of them, or at least one or two of them. So at the end, this module was again about that spiritual hunger that's from that soul, right? It's the soul hole that the food can't fill, or the alcohol can't fill, or the doom scrolling, or the spending, or the gambling can't fill, right? And it shows up feeling like emptiness, restlessness, feeling like you don't have purpose. Gratitude and radical acceptance are practical daily tools that we can use every day, right? Like whenever it's accessible to us as we're sitting in our car, riding on the subway, in a meeting, right? That can help refill that cup. And the four agreements, if we like those as kind of a guide, like a guiding structure, right? Being impeccable with our word, not taking things personally, not making assumptions, and doing our best. So in the end, module 1 was about understanding, right? It was a lot of psychoeducation around emotional hunger versus physical hunger, that kind of thing. Module 2 was showing up around self-care. Module 3 was about play. Module 4 was about connect. There is a big theme about attachment theory in these modules as well, kind of relating back to how we formed attachments, how that can show up in the ways that we maybe don't engage in self-care, in ways we don't engage in play, in ways that we don't connect with others. And so, yeah, that is it for the recap slides that I had. Did we have questions about module 4 or any of the modules after going through the recap? And it doesn't even have to be specifically about the modules, but about concepts that pertain to yourself from those modules.
I like the piece. I really like the piece you mentioned about the four agreements, being impeccable with your word, because sometimes if you're nervous, for me anyway, and I feel like I don't have much to talk about, I think I talk about what I'm going to do, and then it kind of demotivates me. So it's a habit, and I have to practice, and I know that. So hopefully going forward, I'll work more on that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So often we make promises to ourselves that either we have no intention of ever keeping, or there we overpromise and underperform for ourselves. So yeah, that idea of being impeccable with our word, like having that integrity. If I say today I am going to take 10 deep breaths before I eat anything, right? Since we're talking about emotional eating, I'm going to take 10 deep breaths before I eat anything, right? Stick to it. If that is something that you want to do because you feel like, okay, this is a mindful eating tool that may or may not be helpful to me, but I'm not entirely sure, but I want to practice that. If I give myself that uh, kind of task for the day, follow through. Follow through to the best of your ability. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? But if I put food into my mouth 10 times in a day, right? What if I did it 5 times or 3 times? Maybe I'm only maybe I'm only eating 6 meals or 3 meals or 2 meals, whatever. But maybe I'm also like stopping and getting tea, or I'm, you know, I'm cooking dinner and I'm a person maybe who likes to sample as I go. What would it be like to practice 10 deep breaths? Again, if that's the thing you do. But yeah, absolutely, Sheila. Thank you. Anything else from from the perspective of asking questions about emotional eating?
Not so much a question, but like I really needed to hear all the parts about joy and spiritual hunger. I feel like I don't even remember those, and it makes so much sense. Like, yes, I think both of those things are such integral components um, to why I eat, why I emotionally eat. And I think for me, the biggest challenge is the unconsciousness. It's like remembering to do the things that I promise myself I'll do. And it's like I really have to focus on it or I just forget. And I know that's pretty common, but it's just like, yeah. And I do think to what Sheila said, it's like, it's about self-trust. It's about if I'm going to say I'm going to do something, then I need to really honor that. And then over time, I can build that self-trust. And I guess, yeah, it's just important to keep trying and not think that I failed forever if I don't remember one day.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's, and certainly if anybody has worked with me for any period of time, you've heard me say, and how will you remember?
right.
Right? And how will you remember? And how will you remember? And how will you remember? Because
Yeah.
our brains love habituation. They love it. They love it. And so when we are trying to create a new habit or a new behavior, right, where we want something else to be happening instead of the thing, we have to practice it over and over and over again. And we don't always remember. I think about if you ever played sports, for the first week or two, you're like, when is practice? Right? Like, what time do I have to be on the field? Right. So like you have notes or alarms going off on your phone, right? Until you start to get into the groove of like, oh yeah, it's Thursday, so practice is at whatever time. Cool. Right. But it might take you a few weeks to remember that because life is still lifing. And it's okay to put reminders places. It's okay to forget. And then as soon as we remember, we're right back to it. Yep. Yeah. I know. Enjoy and play and that spiritual hunger side of things, I think we often miss because we believe so heavily that it's got to be about the basics. If the basics don't do it, then right, then there's something wrong with me. But the truth is like the basics are just meant to get us started. They're just meant to stabilize us in a place where then we can start to address the deeper drivers. And the way that we get to those things are with the things like the play and the spirituality and the trust in self, that integrity that we need to practice sometimes if we haven't spent a lot of our lives practicing it. Yeah, two channels on
It's
the
true.
internet. Yeah, two channels, no
Yeah,
internet. It's true. It's true. I
yeah.
know. I'm
Just exploring things, and like there was no screens or anything. So if you had to work out how to do something, or you often had to use trial and error, and that was good fun as well. So yeah,
Yep,
it was a great
absolutely.
time. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, there was a time when, if, our favorite programs were on TGIF Fridays or whatever, right? So you would wait all week to like watch your three
Yeah.
favorite shows or whatever. And you had to have the rabbit ears and the tinfoil. And yes, absolutely. But
Mm.
there was community and connection in that, right? Because we all had to get together, and then there was no such thing as like TiVo, right? Like we weren't pausing it if it came back on after the
No.
commercial. Like you had to run and go to the bathroom and get your drink and all the things. But like people would be like, hurry,
Mm.
hurry, hurry, and they'd fill you in, right? There was just so much more community and connection. There was so much
Yeah, I think
more
so.
involved in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we can start to find that again if we're willing to get
Yeah.
curious. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we are just about at time, and I certainly want to be respectful of everybody's time. If there are any
No,
questions
that
or
was great. Thanks
concerns,
a
yeah,
million.
yeah, you bet. And I hope that this like kind of reinvigorates you to like go
Definitely.
back to
Yeah.
the videos and stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
certainly,
Thanks.
if you're in membership, you can bring questions there if you have more questions about it.
All
Emotional
right.
eating is
Yeah.
always one that everybody relates to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Molly. I appreciate it a lot. Yep.
Yeah,
It's
you
good.
bet. Yeah, take care,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
If you like what you heard today, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching.